Hello friends, welcome back to another educative content. So today we'll be talking about salts. So we have been talking about salts, but today we'll be more focusing on sodium chloride. Last session we had talked about calcium, the salt. Today we'll be talking about the sodium, the salt. So what sodium is, how sodium came into our system and how we are consuming it. I think majority of you know how it is because whatever food you eat basically contains the salt as a taste enhancer. Though FDA and FSSAI talk about consumption to be kept at the tab of 10 grams per day, we always overshoot it no matter what happens because that's how our taste or that's how our liking for the salt is. You know, it's not just in the food preparation itself, it's also in the food consumption also. Even if you consider vegetables and fruits along with meat or anything, even if you take it in the raw nature, they also contain some of these sodiums and chlorides. So they enhance the taste, they enhance the way we eat the food. So it's very important for us to change our way of eating food. At least change the source of salt. Instead of carrying refined salt, you can go for sea salt or any other salt which is available. We recommend always sea salt because that is at least 40% less than what exactly salt is available. That is, sodium is available in the regular table salt. So, moving on to understand more about salt. In a basic sodium chloride solution, the first thing is 40% of this salt is sodium in nature, 60% is chloride in nature. As I've said, it flavors the food, but also it acts as a good binder and also stabilizes the food. So that is the reason why we have made ourselves to eat the salt more and more in our day-to-day life. Also, it acts as a good preservatives. All your pickles, papads, and all those things are preserved well when you are kept in a salt solution because obviously it reduces the bacterial activity. It keeps the so-called rotting aside a little, and then it only functions on preserving this content of food. We as humans, though, require sodium chloride in our day-to-day activity because the conductivity of nerves is much faster in sodium than any other salt. Probably you might have done an experiment, passing a current in a regular water and passing a current in a salt solution. Salt solution has a better conductivity than the regular water. So that is the reason why our entire focus on conductivity of your nerves, on conductivity of your electricity in the body relies on sodium and chloride. So we basically need somewhere around 500 milligrams of sodium per day. But yes, on a tab, if we can see, everybody recommends us somewhere around close to 10 to 15 grams of salt, but we always overshoot it, as I said earlier. So that is the reason why we need to consume salt rightfully. If you are able, you can always change your regular salt some other salt like that of sea salt, pink salt, black salt, gray salt, red salt, or smoke gray salt. Any of these salts are always good for you rather than relying on the white salt. White salt, which is clearly made up of sodium, is actually not good for your body. So let me give you an example how this hijacks the flavors of other tastes. Let's assume that you're preparing a South Indian chutney, which basically has peanuts or it basically has nuts, coconut, ginger, pudina. Some people add pudina. Some people also add dhania or what is dhania. You can see the taste. So this to bind everything together, we need salt. Let's say one day you forgot to add this salt. The first thing which happens to you is you individually find the taste of all these ingredients. So that's how intriguing the salt is. So this is also true when you go to hotels and other fast food chains of restaurant. They don't create new package every time. So they already make French fries and keep it aside. When you come, they add the flavors to it. So to keep it them or preserve it them, they obviously add salt. So once after the boiling process happens, they have to again add the salt to enhance the taste. So yes, as I said, it enhances the taste. So we add more and more salt to the already available salt which is there in the food. So if you cook at home than eating outside, then your salt reduction happens automatically. That's the first thing. But if you cook with more consciously and trying to avoid salt to making it as minimal as possible, that's very good. The reason why we are focusing more on reduction of salt is not just on hypertension, but on many things. because there are three major functions which happens in the system because of sodium chloride. One is renin-angiotensin mechanism, which we'll be talking about in a moment. Then is osmotic equilibrium, holding the water where it is necessary, and also regulating the pH. When I say regulating the pH, today there is in the market, there's a lot of people are adding alkalizer to the water. Water, when you go through RO waters generally focus on a removal of all the major salts and making it more blander. And people believe that this is more acidic in nature. Mind it, when I hope you have done the so-called chemistry level of understanding the potence, more acidic and more alkaline. When you have to make more something alkaline, you have to again put more sodium chloride in the solution to make it more alkaline and not hydrochloric acid. So basically, this is a very immature talk which we generally see across the spectrum of people adding alkalizer or creating a water which is more alkalizing in nature and thus helping the system. This doesn't happen on a long run. So this is one thing which you need to understand. Water in its entirety source knows how to balance itself for the sodium, for the potassium, for the magnesium, and for everything which is available and required for general functioning of the body. But anything which you put more to it actually hampers the system. Along with that, the third thing which is very important is obviously communicating with the other neurons which is available in the body. So I hope that there is no much of a difference or there is much of a difficulty in understanding that alkalizing water is not good for your system. So we'll talk about this alkalizers in some other slides or in some other topic. But as of now, you need to understand that this itself is very bad. So drink water the way you have, because in Bangalore here we are drinking Kaveri water, but we don't know what exactly is it. It has its own requisites for its way of handling the system. So make sure that you drink adequate water. However, water you drink, it's not going to make much of a difference. So RO water, non-RO water, all those things generally doesn't really have much of a difference in your body's impacts. So let's try to understand what exactly is renin-angiotensin mechanism and sodium-potassium channels or pump. So renin is an important ingredient in creating other mechanism for your body, which is generally from the kidneys. So the salt which you consume first gets into your system and then slowly gets reabsorbed in your so-called kidneys. They're filtered in the kidneys. And because of the concentration of the sodium, the renin becomes a little bit of more active and they are passed on to the regular system. When it gets in the system, then the liver pushes one more chemical which is called as angiotensin. I'm trying to keep it more simple. I'm not trying to complicate it. So because of this renin and angiotensin in the system, they act as a kind of a stress inducing situation in your body. What is a stress kind of a situation in the body? Your heartbeat increases, your heart rate increases. Because of your heart rate increases, there is constriction of your nerves, constriction of your vessels because of a smooth flow of water of the blood in the system. Because there is this little bit of a stressful situation, the kidneys now produce more of corticosteroids, which acts good for a limited amount of time, but it becomes very bad because of all the other problems which it has. Because there is an increase in the sympathetic activity, that is a stressful activity, the water is held up in the system. Because there's water is held up in the system, obviously your skin will be more edematic in nature. It will not leave more of a water to be utilized. It gets stored in the system. And also because of which we have a lot of retention which is happening over serious of amount of time. You feel more thirst and you drink more of sodium water. So this keeps on circulating in the body without much of a strain. So in here, I mentioned about retention of the water, one. Second is constriction of your lumens or arteries. What is hypertension? Hypertension is nothing but the pressure exerted by the blood on the surface of your lumen or the surface of the artery without expansion. So this angiotensin doesn't even let the so-called tubes to expand, leading to a false kind of a statement for your body, making it more of a hardened way. That is the reason why you have hypertensives today asks by many doctors to reduce their salt consumption. Just by reducing or cutting the salt is not going to change the situation. Yeah, because the food, as I said, it is not just about adding the table salt, it's about how you try to change the way you entirely eat your food. So this is all about renin-angiotensin mechanism. So kidney and along with liver produces angiotensin, which obviously has its own activities of increasing your activity of your body, which is basically a stressful in condition. Second, this leads to retention of water in your system. It constricts the arteries, that's leading to hypertension or blood pressure, and that leads to, along with that, leads to reabsorption of water. So you have too much of water which has been retained in the system along with the constriction of arteries, giving you a false hypertension and edema in this system. Now let's try to understand what exactly happens when your water is retained. So what do you mean by water retention is, let's consider this as the inside of this cell, okay, and this is the outside of the cell. So any object which let's say which is permeable through the cell membrane, if it has to get inside, there are two salts which is taken care like guards of your cell. The first one is the potassium salt. The second one is the sodium salt. So to move across the gradient, let's say this is higher concentration and this is lower concentration. So anything moves across the higher concentration to the lower concentration to maintain the or achieve the balance. So this is true for the body's balance also. So let's say you have higher potassium requirement in the body inside the cell and lower potassium in the outside of the cell, then anything can come out easily, so that the potassium goes in and the outside it comes out with much easier. Similarly, that happens in the sodium also. So high amount of sodium outside the cell retains the water, low amount of sodium inside the cell retains the water. So to move inside, the sodium reduces itself so that the 150 moles of molecules get inside and balances us out as sodium to sodium equal. Similarly, outside also potassium comes out to maintain the balance equally. So this is the very important source. So osmolarity of the water or osmolarity of the compound is maintained for better transmission or transfusion of compounds from outside to the inside. So this is one reason why this fails, because let's say you are having too much of sodium in your system. So outside the body, always the concentration of sodium is higher. So what happens is we don't achieve the gradient which is required for moving it into the system. So then what happens is water is getting collected in the outside of the system, thus leading to edema or water retention. So because of this, the entire system gets problematic. One reason is kidneys do not work sufficiently, because of which we don't use water in reabsorption. So I hope you understood as basics as possible. We have to maintain an equilibrium across the two states, that is outside and inside. If there is no equilibrium, there is always a movement of water either in or out. So outside you always, or inside you always have adequate water. Outside you don't have much of water, so it balances out. So because the outside the concentration is higher, the inside cell will never able to reach to that state, and thus the water gets retained outside the cell, that leading to edema. Simple enough to understand, and not try to complicate it more. So when is this available, or what happens when the sodium itself is too low or too high in the system? Obviously, because today people think that just by consumption or reducing the consumption of food or reducing consumption of sodium will have a lot of effect, but there is a lot of problems which happens. One such is because of low sodium concentration, we have something called as hyponatremia. Generally, what happens is it's because of two things. One is low volume. When we say low volume, it is the water is very low in the system, because of which you can go to something called as hyponatremia. This generally happens because of diarrhea, vomiting, and sweating. Along with normal volume. Normal volume is where the volume, the blood or the water in the system is retained, but still you sometimes go down because of sodium is not consumed well. That happens especially when you have thyroid. As you can see here, pituitary gland is also one such kind of an important source for regulating sodium and potassium in the system. Obviously, thyroid, because of its not functioning well, it doesn't absorb or retain the sodium cells better, and that leads to low sodium in the system. Obviously, along with that, you have heart failure, you have kidney failure, or you have liver failure. As you can see here, heart obviously fails, that leads to a pressure on kidneys. If kidney fails, obviously the pressure is on liver, and the liver fails, the pressure is again on the kidneys or the heart. That is the reason why this three triads is always important for maintaining better chemical nature of the system. So what happens? As I said, diarrhea, vomiting is one signs of hyponatremia. Along with that, we have something called as short-term memory loss. Why short-term memory loss? Because there is no sodium in the system. As I said, the conductivity between the sodium or between the cells reduces. Because there is low sodium, you cannot remember, because for remembering things, you need at that moment some of the sodium for the electrical transmission to happen well. That doesn't happen, then you don't retain your thoughts. Because you don't retain your thoughts, you keep forgetting well. Along with that, you have muscle weaknesses, muscle cramps, and spasm. So now I hope you got to understand how exactly our memories, our emotions are also having some of the nature with that of the chemicals which is present here. If you want to know more detailed analysis about chemical nature of the body, please drop down in the comment below so that it understands, or it makes me feel that people require to understand how chemical nature is also important for the body to make sure it's emotionally more stable. So this is about hyponatremia. Hypernatremia is also very similar, but only thing is its way it modifies itself is different. So you can see hypernatremia if you are fever, if you have extremely thirst, and also if you have increased rate. As I said, it creates a kind of a stressful situation. Body feels that there is a lot of stress which is creating the body, and slowly the increase in the breathing rate also sees with similar to that of a stress. So let's say you have gone on a 100-meter dash. The first thing is changes in your breathing rate, because the metabolic activity is used well. Why metabolic activity is used well? Because body needs to absorb more glucose from the system. Again, if you want more idea about it, obviously you can look into my previous content which I have talked about metabolism in the system. And the third thing which is very important is diabetics. So diabetes also people who eat a lot of food, sodium increases, sugar increases, and they have too much of sodium in the system. So what as a major symptom happens is you feel very thirsty when you are undergoing hypernatremia. So there's too much of a sodium, you need more water, but it is not utilizing well. So the water is just to quench the thirst, that's all. Then what happens is, because of too much of sodium in the cells, uh, obviously the muscles get twitching, the muscles have problem, and in your emotion level you become more anxious. Because of your more anxiousness, you become more confused, and if you're more confused, then that leads to seizure, and that can lead to coma. So confusion is not just about, you're not getting to understand, you are basically you're high on the importance of what do you say, chemical in that body system, and that leads to a lot of confusion, and that generally leads to some kind of anxiousness in your system. Well, hypernatremia leading to coma is a very big chapter, so I'll not dig into it. But yes, too much of consumption of salts will make you more anger, create the more anger in you, and that leads to more anxiousness in you. That is also one reason why sodium has to be reduced. Make sure that your emotions are balanced well. So moving on, trying to understand now what exactly are the good salts which is required for the body. Now, let's say you make a decision of not having the natural sources of table salt, but you would like to push yourself into different ways of salts which is available in the market, such as the magnesium salts, the potassium salts, and other salts, which is basically very common, like that of pink salt and green salt, and all those kind of salts are available. But are they basically necessary is the question. Recently, there was a study which was done on American soil. Obviously, all the research comes from the American part. But what they try to know is, does reduction of salt will lead to some of the changes in any of these kind of a category? It's very important, because the food nature of Americans are different. The food nature of Asians and Southeast Asians are different. The food of Africa is different. So that is the reason why it has a little bit of racial touch to it, trying to understand what exactly is ethnically how people are modifying their diet. When this was studied, that people who reduce their salt intake, all the people who reduce their salt increase, there was a reduction in their pressure, in their blood pressure, to at least 4 mm of Hg per person. But this was very significant in only white Americans. It was not much significant, or the evidence doesn't show much of a conclusory way of telling that this happened also on blacks, that is Africans, Southeast Asian, that is Indian and subcontinent, and also Asians, that is China and Japan. There was no much of a problem because of reduction in salt, especially on these communities. But that doesn't tell you that you have to start eating salt. The other thing which they could find out was it also showed the negative effects on the hormones and the lipid levels as well. So salt not just changes the internal chemistry to just hypertension. As I've said, it creates an environment of stress, and that environment of stress is what changes the hormone production, changes the lipid profiles, and also decreases majority of the uh, right ways of handling this system. So just by reducing the salt is generally not recommended, but yes, changing the way you eat the food is what we are looking at. How do you change the regular consumption of salt is very important. Try getting, as I said earlier, change your food from regular table salt, push it towards sea salt, dry salt or gray salt, which is available. Then instead of, if you want to have a costlier affair, you can always go for potassium chloride, which is obviously tastes like a salt, but it is basically made up of potassium chloride. So it is a little bit costlier in manufacturing it. If you don't want to get in the business of salts, then always you can go for something called as DASH diet, which is a specific diet focused on stopping hypertension. So this talks about the importance of raw fruits, vegetables, and other things, which is more focused on understanding the way your body handles the amount of salts it gets. So you're training your body. It's kind of a disciplining your body in understanding the requisites of salt. So again, if you want to know more about DASH diet or any of these diets which is available, if you drop a mail, or if you give a like button, or if you give a thumbs up, then it will motivate me to do more. So even if you have any queries regarding that, you can write down in the comments. And also, along with that, you can try changing the taste or changing the smell or overpowering your taste buds. So that's very important. As I said, the chutney example or the chutney hypothesis, you can also try these things instead of salt. Add a tinge of onion, add a tinge of garlic, or add a little bit more lemon to this preparation, add a little bit of pepper to the preparation, rosemary or sage, any of these things which counteracts all the other tastes. If you can take it, then probably the salt, the relishment of salt reduces in the system. So make sure that you don't binge on more of salt, the table salt which is available. Rather, focus or diversify your preparation of food. Who knows, because of these ingredients, you might come up with your own different way of handling your salt queries in your system. So I hope you like this session on salt, though a little bit of more depth. I try to touch in a different aspect. We will be talking about the importance of salt in the coming few more talks of mine. So stay tuned to this channel. Every Sunday or every fun day, we'll be updating with the more health status of yours. So this content, helping it, sharing with among your friends, more subscription gives me an effect to make it more effective in reaching out to you guys. And also it makes me aware of what exactly is lacking of it. So you can always write down in the comment section about what is the important topic which you would like to know, what is the importance which you would like to understand. So anything and everything is appreciated. But if you want to be more personal and try to give more attention towards your health and like to discuss your health issues, you can always write down to dradityahandey@gmail.com, where we are focusing on to more of your personal requirements. But yeah, always there's YouTube channel which comes up every weekend to make sure that you are aware of your body, your mind, and the way to better help yourself out. So stay tuned for more such contents. Subscribe to the channel, encouraging me to make more such videos. Till then, next time, thank you.